Okay, so I think, excuse me, I think we're probably just about ready to get started again. Okay, I think there's just a couple of other people just coming in. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay. Okay, so let's pick up from where we finished just before lunch. Oh, hang on a second. There we go. Okay. Okay, that's better. Okay, so what we're going to look at next, hang on a sec, let's make sure. Yep, what we're going to look at next is the onboard network system, or ONS. So the onboard network system itself, it comprises really of normally just a single network file server. Okay, the network file server is in the electrical equipment bay. We'll show you the location in a moment. There is an option for a second network file server. However, not many airlines have taken that second option for the file server. So most of them just have the single unit fitted. The network file server itself, it does a whole bunch of things. The onboard network system, together with the network file server, is basically a computer-based information system. It not only supports maintenance, which we gain access to the onboard maintenance function with. It manages faults. It allows us to do software loads, allows us to carry out ground tests. All that software is located in the network file server. It's also used by flight, okay, and we can also use it if they've got the options for cabin operations. So if you've got things like electronic flight bags, things like that, or electronic checklists, that type of thing, you can use a network file server for that. Electronic logbooks, cabin logbooks, again, are all optional. If you do have them, then the software is in the network file server. You can also have My Boeing fleet accounts set up on these things. If you do, again, they can connect to external components. When I say external components, I mean external from the network file server and the onboard data network system. Things like engine, or sort of say airplane health monitoring and things of that nature, engine health monitoring. All this is done through the network file server. Network file server can also set up communications. If you have communications management units, ACARs, things of that nature, then the two can work together and they can provide you an off-board data link, so you can connect the aircraft to a ground station, transmit and receive data directly to or from the network file server to the airline servers. So it's very flexible. Many options when it comes to the network file server, primarily software options. This is just giving you an idea, this picture of some of the connections that you may have. Again, as I say, mainly optional. Portable maintenance device, as you can see here, we're just showing that as a laptop. You know, as long as you've got the ability to connect a portable maintenance device. It could be anything really. It doesn't have to be a laptop like this. It could be a tablet, things of that nature. You do have an additional LAN connector on the front here for an Ethernet connection. That provides you with your second hardwired connection. It can also provide you with wireless connections as well. There's firewalls inside here to protect the individual systems. The hard drives, which are located inside the network file server itself, again, they are partitioned to provide some kind of security. The options for wireless, we have the airplane wireless LAN units and the crew wireless LAN units. Airplane wireless LAN unit primarily connects the aircraft automatically to what we call gate link via Wi-Fi technology. Okay, so when the aircraft touches down, has to be on the ground, you have to have the gate link capability at the airfield. The system will try to locate that the wireless network, and it will connect itself. Once the aircraft and the network file server is connected to that wireless network, then it can automatically navigate its way through to the airline and to the file and to the servers at the airline. At that point, again, it depends on who's controlling the software, the individual airlines, but at that point, you will have, or the system will search for software updates, and any applicable software updates will automatically be downloaded from the servers, things like Software Librarian, the enabling team organise all that. That software will then be downloaded to the network file server and stored on the hard drives, or you may see them referred to as mass storage device. That is just a hard drive. Okay. When that software is downloaded to the network file server, it's just stored there. The aircraft at that point isn't using it. Okay. If it's an LSAP, a loadable software airplane part. We can also connect the network file server directly to the airline servers using the cellular connection, okay, terminal cellular. And most airlines who operate the 87 who I've worked with, again, I'm assuming the MAX will be no different. They'll use the same sort of process. They normally use terminal cellular. It's much more widely available, and you don't have to pay any charges to the airfield, the airport authority, as you would do with Gatelink. So you've got the option there for the airplane wireless or the terminal cellular. Both are optional. The crew wireless, well, that allows me to wirelessly connect a portable maintenance device. Okay, so not only can I hardwire portable maintenance devices, if they have Wi-Fi technology and I have the crew wireless LAN system fitted to the aircraft, which is an option, then I can wirelessly connect my portable maintenance device. Okay. And I'll show you what you can do with the portable maintenance device a little bit later on. Okay. We also can have a connection to from the network file server to the satellite communication systems. Again, SATCOM is optional. I do believe now that it has been certified on the MAX. So again, if you have the broadband data link system, you can do continuous parameter loading. You can also use this system to allow you to provide, should I say, connection for passengers and crew to the internet, so you can access emails and such like. Very, very configurable depending on what you are willing to pay for. ACARs, again, ACARs and communications management units, they're optional. If you do have them, then the network file server can connect to them, use them as an interface to connect the network file server in the aircraft to a ground station to provide you with that continuous parameter login and things of that nature, uplink and downlink. We also have the option for the permanent fixed electronic flight bag. These are touchscreen if you have them. Not seen many aircraft, MAX aircraft with these fixed EFBs. A lot of airlines, I guess, are using the portable EFBs now, which you can probably get on these iPads and such like. But the option is there. The printer, yeah, the printer on the MAX is an option. If you have the printer, then again, the printer will allow you to print off reports that are generated by the network file server. And we have the data load panel. The data load select panel, together with the maintenance panel, allows me to load software not only to the network file server, but also allows me to copy software from the network file server to a final destination, what we call data loading. The DPCs, again, we have a connection to the DPCs because we can display information within the NFS, within the network file servers. Again, as I say, the maintenance pages, the maintenance data pages that we've just looked at, that software, that operating system is inside the NFS. Okay. And we also have a connection to the digital flight data acquisition unit. The DFDAU connects obviously to the flight data recorder, but it also connects to the network file server for two reasons. So we can update software. We can update the software for the digital flight data acquisition unit, but also so we can send information from the DFDAU to the network file server itself. because the network file server is now our quick access recorder. Okay, a lot of aircraft have a standalone QAR, whether it be an optical drive, some kind of device like that. You can still get a standalone quick access recorder for the MAX. It's just that that is no longer standard. The network file server provides that capability now. Okay. When you look at the network file server itself, it really is pretty much the only component for the onboard network system. Everything else is just an interface. So there's a lot of connections to this network file server. Inside it, you know, you've got a couple of hard drives, obviously got circuitry, CPUs and such like. It's used as a depository, so you would store pretty much all of your software in here. It will also use to store files, reports that have been generated either by maintenance, fault reports may have been generated by the maintenance function, or fault reports that have been generated by LRUs. A lot of LRUs can produce reports now automatically, and we can also download fault reports from LRUs to the network file server. So it provides us all kinds of things, and it provides us with a link to the aircraft as well, both remotely using wireless or cellular, or via a portable maintenance device. Okay. You've probably heard the term LSAPs, loadable software airplane parts. An LSAP is a piece of software. It is given a part number, so it's treated as a physical part. If you are to update many, not all, but the majority of LRUs on this aircraft, then you will be using the network file server to do it. Pretty much everything on this aircraft that has software in it, there are exceptions, but pretty much everything that has software in it that can be updated, that software gets to those final destinations via the network file server. We do that to allow us to have the latest version of software traveling with the aircraft wherever it goes. And if we are at a remote station, let's say, and the aircraft lands, it can automatically update software itself. It will drag that information from the server, store it on the hard drives, the new LSAP, and then maintenance will come along and copy that LSAP to a destination. So an example that I always use is something like the flight management. The FMC, the flight management computer, every 28 days you have your nav database update. Okay, there are no diskette ports, data load ports, or anything of that nature unless you take the optional data load port on the maintenance panel. The only way to get software into the network file server is either terminal cellular, terminal wireless, or via the portable maintenance device. So let's say the aircraft lands, it doesn't matter where it is, it lands, it gets some kind of connection, either terminal cellular or terminal wireless. It connects to the airline's servers and it will download the latest nav database. Okay, that database will be loaded and stored in the network file server. It's a filing cabinet, electronic filing cabinet. At some point, maintenance will be given a job card to update the nav database. They will go use a portable maintenance device or the MAX display system, and they will copy that LSAP, that new version of software, to the flight management computers. As they copy the software to the computers, it is a copy. They don't physically remove the software from the network file server. It's not a cut and paste. It's like a copy and paste. Okay, so you'll always have the latest version of software on the network file server. You'll probably find, depending on the airlines and how they're going to manage this, you'll probably find that they'll have the current version of software and a previous version as well. So you've got something to fall back on. They are hard drives that are inside these boxes. So over time, they will start to fill up. They'll get full. The capacity will be reduced. So at some point, maintenance will have to come in to delete some of those old files. Okay. So that's the network file server itself. The box, as I say, normally is just one fitted. You do have the option for a second one located in the electrical equipment bay, which we'll look at in a moment. These are showing you some of the connections that you can have to the network, you will have to the network file server. If we start off with the maintenance pipe panel, we know where that is, P61. You'll see here that it's not got that optional data loader connector on it there. So we don't have that additional connector on this aircraft. We do have on every MAX aircraft this connection. Okay, this allows me to physically connect a portable maintenance device to that panel using an Ethernet cable. Okay, having 615. So we've got the connection to that connection point on the aircraft P61. The P61 panel itself, again, is connected by Ethernet, direct connection to the network file server. Okay, so this connection here allows me to do a number of things. It allows me to copy software from the portable maintenance device to the network file server, LSAPs and such like. It also allows me to interrogate that network file server and drag files from that network file server to a portable maintenance device. Okay, reports, things of that nature. So we've got those hardwired connection points there. On the front of this box, and I'll show you in a moment, there's a knurled screw at the top there, a fastener. Undo that, again, it's supposed to be captive. It hinges at the bottom here, the flap opens, and inside there you've got a whole bunch of things, different connection points, lights, little LEDs. You've also got an SD card in there, okay? An SD card that you push in, it's for backup. We'll look at that again in a moment too. This is also showing you some other connections to various other components on the aircraft, some of which will be optional, some are standard, but it's just giving you an idea of what you could see or what you could have connected. These grey lines here, these thick grey lines, these are Ethernet cables, okay, so ARINC 615A. These ones here probably ARINC 429, that type of thing, but they are digital connections. And then we have these connections here. These are either going to be analog or discrete, okay, connections. So a whole bunch of different types of connections on here. The data load select panel, well, this is being dragged across from the NG, okay, so there's no real differences there. The only differences you'll see are what options you have here. If you don't have a certain component, a certain LRU, like SATCOM, then you won't have the position for it, okay. But we still have to use this, okay, on the MAX. A number of components connect directly to the network file server, as you can see here. An example, digital flight data acquisition unit, the display processor computers, the EECs, a hand-scram proximity warning computer, and if you have the optional airplane wireless and cellular wireless, again, Ethernet connections. Okay, the printer is optional. Even though they are directly connected to the network file server, we still have to use for some of those the data load panel. And we use this data load panel for this output here, okay? This output here is an analog output, okay? And basically what this is allowing me to do, it basically sets these components up, these LRUs up. It sets them up, configures them to accept a new software load. So this is probably going to be a discrete that's coming out of here. So when I select this rotary control to a specific component, even though the software is going to go directly from the network file server directly to that component to update the software, it still needs this input. This input is, in the case, let's say, the digital flight data acquisition unit or the DPC, no data transmission of new software is going this way. Nothing goes this way other than that discrete. That discrete tells the DFDAU or the DPCs, get ready for an update. Okay, so it arms the system. In those cases, the software will go from the network file server directly to those components. For these components, as you can see here, the flight management computers, the satellite data unit, that type of thing, head-up display if you have it, the audio control panels, APUC, integrated air systems controllers. Again, this information goes through the data load panel, okay? Not only does it arm the system to allow them to accept new software, but in those cases, the software is going that way. Okay, so this is allowing existing systems on the NG to basically interface with this box. Some interface directly, some indirectly, okay? So all your software, majority of your software is going to be stored in this box as well. Okay. We've already seen this picture. We show it a number of times. In this case, we've got the optional data loader port here. There's our ground test, which we'll look at that in a moment. We've already mentioned this maintenance selector, the left or right inboard screen for the flight first officer or captain. Again, you've got your own cursor control, so you can control the displays from the flight deck door. And then here, this is where I plug my portable data, sorry, my portable maintenance device in. Over here, you've got the data load select panel. Like I say, no real differences between that and the one fitted to the NG. So yeah, just got a question through. So it's regarding the network file server about about software, the operational software. I'm assuming you're talking about when you talk about core software, operational software for the network file server. Yeah, it does. It requires, I think, if I remember rightly, there's 7 software loads just to get the network file server up and running. Operational software for the NFS. Okay. When you say core, I'm assuming you're looking at the core network cabinet on a 787. The network file server is pretty much doing exactly what the core network cabinet does on a 787. Very similar functionality. Okay, but it does require its own software to operate. Its own operational software, should I say? Okay. Why is it not going on? There we go. SD cards, they're standard. Standard off-the-shelf SD card. We'll look at that in a moment. Okay, but they are a standard SD card. There's nothing special about them. The network file server. If you go to your local store, computer store, get an SD card, 32 gig card, stick it in the front of the network file server, it'll automatically initialize it. Okay, format it to make it compatible with the network file server. But there's nothing obscure about them. They're just a standard SD card. Okay, they are standard on the aircraft. Yes. I'll give you some more information about the SD cards in a moment. Some good information about those as well. Okay, so that's our maintenance pipe panel P61 and also the data load select panel. This here says option, a little bit misleading. Okay, the panel isn't an option. The panel's on every aircraft. That little tag there should be on that connector. Okay, that is optional. The panel is standard. This is just showing you the location. So you didn't have a card in your aircraft. Will that be something that Boeing will require us to install? Well, I don't know if Boeing will require you to actually have an SD card fitted, but it would be beneficial and very wise for an airline to have an SD card fitted. And I'll explain why in a moment. They're not expensive. They're very cheap when you compare it to the price of other things. Probably a couple of pounds, a couple of dollars, something like that. I don't know, but they're not expensive at all. But I would have thought it would be highly recommended to have an SD card fitted into a network file server. And I'll explain in a moment why. So this is showing you where the network file server is located. Okay, on the E42 shelf. You may see these on the NG. A lot of the later NGs did have network file servers on them, but they didn't give you the functionality that you've got on the MAX. Okay, the NG was fitted on the E52 shelf, if I remember rightly. But at the end of the day, we're showing a couple of network file servers here. We'd normally see one. A second NFS is an option. So it's loaded. It's located on the E42 shelf in the electrical equipment bay. Forced air cooling. Okay. This is an option. Airplane wireless LAN unit. This, like I say, this allows you to connect to what we call gate link. It gives the aircraft the option when it lands, it's not operational in flight, only when the aircraft is on the ground. Once the aircraft's landed, it's automated. You don't have to do anything with it. The operational software for the network file server will configure this, and it will connect, if it can do, to what we call gate link, the Wi-Fi system at the airfield. On successful connection, it will then navigate through using the internet to get to the airline servers, and it will see if there are any software updates applicable for that aircraft. If there are, then it will automatically download them. Okay, so as long as you've got a link, gate link, it will automatically do that. Okay, as I say, you will find that most airlines have probably gone for the terminal cellular system. Okay, same procedures, same method. It's just using the cellular network rather than the Wi-Fi network. Okay, but you'll find that the terminal cellular and the airplane wireless is contained in the similar box, in the same box, the ones that I've seen. It's like a dual unit. And again, the crew wireless. This is something else that's optional. If you have it, you'll have two of these crew wireless LAN units, local area units, local area network units. One's forward and one aft. There's 4 antennas for each of the crew wireless units, and they allow connection to a portable maintenance device wirelessly. Again, they're an option. The network file server will provide those connections via these LAN units, and the network file server will check for security credentials for the laptops, whether you connect them hardwired or wirelessly. If you are connecting wirelessly, then you'll also have to put a code in, an ID in, okay, to ensure that you're on the correct aircraft for starters, but also to make sure that you've gone through the correct security handshakes when you connect a laptop wirelessly. Wired connections either to the flight deck, to the P61 panel, or to the network file server in the E&E bay, you still, the computer, the portable maintenance devices still have to have the correct software, okay, the correct certificates, security certificates, to allow them access to the network file server, but you don't have to put a password in. The password is only applicable to wireless connections, okay. The network file server will always provide you, as long as it's serviceable, with 2 hardwired connection points. If you have 2 laptops connected hardwired, then it will provide an additional 3 connections wirelessly, or a mix, up to a maximum of 5 connections. So 5 wireless connections, or 2 hardwired, 3 wireless, or 1 hardwired, 4 wireless, whatever the mix and matches. But a maximum of 5 connections at the moment. Okay. This next slide, again, you may or may not have this relay. This relay is only fitted to aircraft that have that additional socket. Okay. The reasoning behind this socket and reason why it's an option is because it allows the airlines to use a portable data loader to load LRUs on the aircraft, okay, without using the network file server. So if the network file server should fail, then it gives them another option, okay. This relay, as I say, it's only fitted if you have that additional socket. The relay gets its power from the circuit breakers. Obviously, we've got a power supply here, okay, that's going to the relay. The earth, the ground, is what's controlling the relay, okay, whether it energizes or de-energizes. What's controlling the earth, the ground? The network file server, okay. So when you start to do data loading, the network file server will close this relay, okay, allowing software that's in the network file server to go through the relay, then off through the data load select panel, and then off to the destination, let's say the flight management computer. If this network file server should fail, then you won't be able to get that software and update the flight management computer if you don't have that additional socket, okay. So in this case, this relay is relaxed because the network file server isn't being used, it's US. As you can see, when the relay is relaxed, then the input to that relay doesn't come from the network file server, it comes from that socket. So you're basically bypassing the network file server there, okay. It's an option, not all airlines have it, but it gives you that additional means to update software to components if you have a failed network file server. It doesn't allow you to update all the components, okay. Anything that connects directly to the network file server, you won't be able to update them, okay. It only allows connection via the data load select panel, okay. So you may or may not see that, depending on whether or not you've taken that additional socket. And then this is just showing you some of the connections. We've already seen something similar to this. Multi-mode receivers or integrated multi-mode receivers if you've got the Honeywell or Collins, depending on which one you have. ATC transponders, again, all connected to the network file server. ADIRUs, display processors, flight management computers, byte panels, enhanced ground proximity. Digital flight data acquisition unit, I don't believe it is the EDFDAU. Data load select panel obviously is connected. Then you've got the EECs that are also connected to the network file server as well. Okay, I believe it's I think it sends vibration data and engine parameters to the network file server because you can do engine balancing and such like. But I'll leave that to Brian to master that tomorrow. And a communications management unit. If you have the optional communications management unit, again, it allows for two-way communication, air to ground, ground to air. Okay, uplink and downlink information, flight plans and continuous parameter logging, that type of thing. Very configurable because it's all controlled by software. And again, we love this picture. It must have cost a fortune to make, so we're making the most of it. But again, we've seen this number of times now today, and you'll probably see it tomorrow as well. As I say, optional, but it is just a standard connector. Okay, Ethernet standard connector. And this is the network file server itself. Okay, it is just an LRU. Inside it, you can see there's different software loads, network file server. There's operational software in there for it. When you do get these network file servers, you do have to put the operational software into them. So you will have a software on your portable maintenance devices that will allow you to do the basic loads to get it working before you can then load other software to it for other systems. The panel at the front here, normally closed, it's just a knurled screw. It's supposed to be captive. When you undo the panel, it hinges down. The panel stays with the unit, doesn't come off. And in here, you've got a whole bunch of different connections. This is the one here, this Ethernet one, that provides you with that other, I think, 615A connection for your portable maintenance device. Okay, so you can have two hardwired connections. These are little LEDs that are showing you the current status of it, whether it's loading, updating, that type of thing. These aren't used, the USBs, HDMI, this one here, this server one here. These are mainly for bench testing and such like, so maintenance wouldn't really normally use those. This here is where we put the SD card. So the SD card itself is a standard off-the-shelf SD card. 32 gig card normally goes in there. We partition that SD card, okay, two separate partitions on it. The SD card there is for a backup, okay. What happens, or what should happen, is the network file server can access this SD card on the ground and in flight, okay. So it can start to copy software, okay, backup software, files, things of that nature that are on the hard drive. It can do that on the ground and in flight for certain pieces of software, and it will make a copy. It will burn a copy onto that 32 gig SD card. Every time the aircraft lands, okay, every time the aircraft lands, it automatically copies everything to the SD card. So even though the hard drive is like 256 gig inside these network file servers, we don't use all the capacity of those hard drives. Okay, we don't use all of that 256 gig. Most of these files are, you know, a few K, 100K, maybe the odd meg file or something like that. But there's nothing huge. Okay, there's no gigabits and stuff like that for these files. Most of it's quite small. But it does provide you with a backup, which is important, because on here, on this network file server, it contains all of your files. So any files reports that have been generated by the maintenance system, the onboard maintenance function. It also has a history of your faults. So your fault history is also stored in the network file server, together with all of your LSAPs, okay? So if you lose the network file server for whatever reason, if it should fail, you've pretty much lost everything that's on it, unless you have the SD card. If you have the SD card, that allows you to restore those files to a new network file server, okay? So one thing to remember is if your network file server should fail, before you send it away, make sure you take the SD card out, okay? Once you get your new network file server, you've loaded the operational software to the network file server, then you put the SD card back in, you can then re-image that network file server. You can restore the information that's off the SD card. Okay, so just be aware of that. If you do swap out these network file servers, just make sure you take the SD card out first before you send it off. Okay. So yeah, the question is about the backups. Is automatic and manual? There's both. It will automatically back up the hard drives to the SD card, but we also give you an option to manually back up and also manually restore the hard drives. I'll show you that in a moment. Okay, it's called the backup and restore system. Okay, that we have on here, BARS. It's called backup and restore system. This is the LAN unit for the airplane wireless. This also has the terminal cellular fitted to it as well. The wireless LAN side of it, the wireless unit, has an external antenna that's on the top of the fuselage, okay, allowing a clear connection to GateLink. These SIMs here are similar to what you'd have in a cell phone, a mobile phone. Okay, they are probably regional or multi-region, depending on where you're flying. And these are the antennas for those SIM cards for the terminal cellular. They are part of the unit. They're inside the cabin. And these are what are going to be used primarily to connect that network file server to the airline servers. Okay. Most airlines use cellular connection rather than wireless connection. So that's where the SIM cards are. They're actually in the wireless LAN unit. It is, as I say, it is an option. I guess more and more airlines are going to take these options because software is important. And then obviously we've seen this before, but this is the crew wireless one. Okay. Again, as I say, it's optional. Forward and an aft one. Again, there's a whole bunch of things you can do with this. You can configure them, and later on today, towards the end of the lesson today, using the portable maintenance device and the maintenance accounts, technician's account, I'll show you how you can manipulate these if you have them and configure them, or at least the page to go to do it. Okay, so we'll look at the onboard maintenance function. The onboard maintenance function itself is like a central maintenance computer. Okay, it's software. That's what it is. It's software. There's no standalone maintenance computer. The software for onboard maintenance is in the network file server. Okay, we also use inputs from the display electronics units. There's software in there as well to do with maintenance. Okay, but the majority, if not pretty much all of the software that we use for the onboard maintenance function is inside the network file servers. There's two ways of gaining access to this information, and as I say, if you have 8.7 experience, it's going to look very, very familiar to you. It's pretty much a standard interface. We have a connection via the portable maintenance device. You will have something like what they call a maintenance technician account. The portable maintenance devices are Windows-based machines, so Windows operating system. You'll have your icon on the desktop somewhere. You double click on the icon. Again, it's software. The laptops in this case we're showing, it's customer configurable, you know, password protection, security, that is going to be A lot of that's going to be down to the airlines, whether you just have a single login for maintenance or whether you have individual logins and such like. So it can be configured how the airlines want. So we've got the portable maintenance device, and this is the sort of menu that you will see, the structure of the menu that you'll see if you use the portable maintenance device. And the other way to access these pages is in the flight deck. So the MAX display system, again, we can access these pages. Onboard maintenance can only be accessed on the ground, okay? Even if you have the above 10,000 feet option and you have that selected, you cannot access the onboard maintenance, okay? This is only available when the aircraft's on the ground. To access it, then we're going to use either the maintenance byte panel and our maintenance selector here, or we're going to use these selectors on the multifunction panel. However, you're going to have to press the systems button first. That takes you to the systems display. From there, you select maintenance, top right hand corner, maint, you select that. It brings you to the status page, and from there you can then navigate along the top here to onboard maintenance. When you select onboard maintenance, these three options become available: line, extended, and other functions. And then when you select one of these, you get your drop-down menu. Okay. So we're going to look at these options that we've got, and we're going to look at them on the display system first, the MAX display system. What you have on the MAX display system, you will also be able to access on the portable maintenance device. Okay. There are additional options on the portable maintenance device. There are additional selections on the portable maintenance device that you cannot access in the flight deck, okay, via the MAX display system. So you can basically do more on the portable maintenance device than you can in the flight deck, okay? Everything in the flight deck you can do on the portable maintenance device, but you can't do everything on the portable maintenance device in the flight deck. So we're going to look at the ones in the flight deck first and the options that we've got, okay? This is just showing you the menu structure. Again, it's very, very similar to the 787, trying to keep things as common as possible. You have experience with 87, then you're going to be able to operate the maintenance system on the MAX and vice versa. 777X is going the same way. So on here we've got line maintenance and our drop-down menu here for line, our extended maintenance and our extended maintenance drop-down menu, and other functions. Okay. The crew wireless access code down here, that is obviously optional. If you don't have the crew wireless, then you do not have that selection. Okay. So I'm going to go through these. As I say, you've probably seen all this before, and it's probably going to be very familiar to you, especially if you've got 87 as well, because the menu structure and the displays are very similar. Okay. The first one we're going to look at is on line maintenance, and it's our inbound flight deck effects. So inbound flight deck effects, what are those? Well, it is basically what it says. It's the inbound flight. So flight leg 0. Flight leg 0 is always the current flight leg. Okay, so we have flight leg 0, current flight leg, and then 1 to 99 are all previous flight legs. So inbound flight deck effects are for the current flight leg 0, and it's flight deck effects, so correlated maintenance messages, status messages. Okay, important. Okay, most important, because you're going to have to either clear those status messages or defer them, okay, before you can dispatch the aircraft. So we select the inbound flight deck effects, okay, and we are presented with this page. Okay, so the page changes to this one, and on here it's listing all the correlated maintenance messages. Okay, so a maintenance message and a flight deck effect. So we've got a fault code and maintenance message. They've been correlated together, okay, and they are now listed as you can see here. These are all status messages. So on your status page, you will also see the status message. Okay, if this item, or sort of say if this fault can be deferred, okay, then you'll also see that status message on your maintenance light page. Not saying that you can defer it. You're going to have to go to the MEL to check that first. So again, on here, we've got a whole bunch of faults at the moment. Some basic information up at the top here to do with tail number of the aircraft, tail ID, current time and date, where the information's coming from, the onboard maintenance function, OMF, which is in the network file server. Telling you here, flight deck effects recorded during the present leg, flight leg 0. Okay. And then down here it lists all of those faults. It's only showing correlated maintenance messages, nothing else. At the top here, we can see our flight deck effect, maintenance enable, the fault code that's tied to that status message, that's the flight deck effect, okay. There's the maintenance message number. It happened on taxiing. Why it would happen on taxiing, I have no idea, because the maintenance switch has been put to enabled. So at some point, somebody's on the aircraft's been taxiing in, somebody's got out of the seat or turned, lifted that cover and put that ground maintenance switch, that ground test switch to enable. It's generated a status message, correlated maintenance message, flight deck effect with a maintenance message, okay? And it's currently active. So it's reporting, the fault is still being reported to the onboard maintenance function. Okay, it's been detected by DPC number 1 and DPC number 2. So this is the same fault, but it's been detected obviously by both display processor computers. So the DPCs together with the network file server and the onboard maintenance function are providing us this information. And again, these are just additional ones down here, okay? It shows us here it's active, the time and date, okay, that the fault was recorded. I can now use my cursor and move down the page, and I can select one of these, okay? If I move my cursor down, unless the case we've moved it down to the bottom one here, it highlights it. I then press maintenance message data. When I select this page changes to this one. And it's providing me with a little bit more information. Again, you may not need it, but you've got it, okay? It's telling me here some information, page 1 of 1. It's correlated to the pack store warning system left. It's been detected by the DPC, sorry, the DPC or DEU is out of range. There's the maintenance message, it's active, so it's still reporting to the onboard maintenance function. It occurred at that time, on that date, in that flight, sorry, in that cruise phase, okay, that phase of flight. There's 15 different phases of flight that the aircraft can be in. So it's trying to isolate it as much as it can. It could be a fault that's happening regularly on this aircraft, but it's only happening at a certain stage of flight. So it's giving you that information as well. You may not need it, but it's there just in case. Then down here, it's saying recommended maintenance actions, okay? So see fault isolation procedure. So see the IFIM, okay? The Integrated Fault Isolation Manual. See the IFIM. It's always going to tell you that. It's always going to refer you to a document, okay? To an official document, AMM, FIM, that type of thing. It's now going to list the possible failures with the most probable cause at the top, okay? So in this case, the most probable cause for this fault is the display processing computer number 1. If it's not that, then it's going to be the store management yaw damper computer, SMID number 1. But you are going to obviously follow the procedure. You're going to follow the fault isolation procedure together with the AMM, okay? But it's trying to give you a little bit of information, as much of information as it can. Over here, it shows you down this point the correlated flight deck effect. So basically, the correlated fault code to that maintenance message. Okay, there's the fault code. Store warning system left. It's a status message, so you're going to see that on your status page. Okay. The aircraft, just like with the 87 and many other aircraft, you have maintenance messages and fault codes. Okay, fault codes are normally tied to the flight deck effect. Maintenance messages are the cause. So cause and effect. You can have a maintenance message without a fault code. You can have a fault code without a maintenance message. Okay, they're not as critical as a correlated maintenance message where you've got a fault code and a maintenance message tied together. An example of a maintenance message without a fault code, so a fault tolerant system. You may have a sensor that has an A and a B channel. It uses both, but it can survive quite happily on one. It loses a sensor, a channel. Channel A's failed, but channel B is still serviceable. Do I need to tell the crew? No, they don't need to know. As far as they're concerned, there's no effect. Okay, the system's still operating perfectly fine, but maintenance need to know. So a maintenance message will be generated and stored in the onboard maintenance function. Okay, you can have a fault code without a maintenance message. A good example of that is a hydraulic pressure. You have the hydraulic switch, the hydraulic pump switch off. You've got no hydraulic pressure. Do you have a low pressure light on? Probably. Because you've got that warning light on, that has generated a fault code. That fault code is in the onboard maintenance function. It's holding that fault code, but it's not really interested in it. It's not going to give you a status message because the pump switched off. Okay? It's going to give you the warning light because when you put the pump on, you want that light to go off. So when you put the pump on, the light goes off, the fault code's gone. But if you put the pump on and the low pressure light stays on, then it's going to generate a maintenance message. And now you've got a fault code, a maintenance message, correlates the two together, bang, it's up the top of the list. Okay, so you can have all different mixes and combinations. You don't always have to have correlated maintenance messages. This is just sorting those messages in an order of priority. Okay, the highest ones first. Show all flight deck effects. So if I click on show all flight deck effects, it's going to show me all the flight deck effects, all flight deck effects that are not correlated. So it's going to show me correlated and non-correlated flight deck effects. Okay, because normally it would just default to show correlated ones, but it allows you to look at all of them as well. Report. That allows me to generate a report which is stored in the network file server, okay, as a report file, and then it will transmit it. If you've got the system set up to transmit, it can transmit via the communications management unit, ACARS. You can download it to the network from the network file server to a portable maintenance device. You can do whatever you want with it. And so long as you've got the software that is capable of opening that file extension, then you can access it and read it. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of options there. Down here, we've got the fault history. So what that does, if I select this fault history icon now, it will search the network file server and the fault history for this aircraft for that maintenance message. We could have had this maintenance message 6 months ago. We've cleared the fault. Even though we no longer show it on the onboard maintenance function, it's still stored, it's still in memory, okay? It still keeps that as fault history. And now we can search for that maintenance message again and see if it's happened in the past. And if it has, we can bring up the page, see when it happened, you know, what phase of flight it happened, what was the cause. So we can start looking back at a history of faults if they're starting to occur more often and when they occurred. And again, as I say, the report allows me to transmit that, save that. Okay. So they are the inbound flight deck effects. We also have the next option down, what we class as existing flight deck effects. It's very similar to the inbound flight deck effects, but again, it's just listing messages differently. Okay. Similar to the inbound flight deck effects, beg your pardon. This is showing all flight deck effects, I beg your pardon. All flight deck effects we've now selected. So you can see here, we're showing we're showing fault codes that are not correlated to a maintenance message and maintenance messages down here that are not correlated to a fault code. Okay, so we can, in this case, if I select hide uncorrelated flight deck effects, it would show all this. Correlated messages, when I select show all flight deck effects, it shows individual fault codes and maintenance messages that have not been correlated together. Okay. And you can see here, it's not active. So where we've got active and not active, active is when it's currently reporting to the onboard maintenance function. Not active is when it's reported, but it's no longer reporting. So there's been a fault, but it's no longer reporting that fault. We may have switched something off, okay? Or you could see latched when a fault has actually been latched in the memory, okay? And we would then have to go and erase that latched maintenance message once we've cleared the fault. So there's a bunch of ways. There's 3 ways you can show a maintenance message of being active or inactive. So these are the existing flight deck effects. As I say, it's similar to the inbound flight deck effects, but it shows all the existing faults on the aircraft. So not just the inbound faults, flight leg 0. So on here you could see faults relating to flight leg 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 99. Okay, these are probably going to be faults that have occurred and probably been deferred, okay, on the aircraft. Again, they're not as important, they've been deferred, but if you can go in and look at them and see what's actually stored there. Okay, so they're not, it's not really filtered for flight leg, as in flight leg 0, current flight leg. It shows everything. Okay, the default shows flight deck effects that have been correlated to maintenance messages. Okay, so correlated ones, very similar to inbound flight deck effects. And then you can, down here, you can show all flight deck effects. Again, all flight deck effects that have occurred on the aircraft, either fault codes, maintenance messages that are not correlated, but not flight leg, well, it will show flight leg 0, but also all previous flight legs as well. Okay, so that's the real difference. Inbound flight deck effects shows for the current flight leg 0, existing flight deck effects shows everything. Flight leg 0 and the previous 99 flights. Again, if we go down to the next one, ground tests. So there's a bunch of ground tests that we can do via the display system, the onboard maintenance function. In this case, this is showing us our ATA chapters. There's going to be nothing in this window at the bottom at the moment until I make a selection up here. So as soon as I make a selection, and make sure you make the correct selection. If you look at ATA 27, there are 2 selections to be made. So make sure you select the right one. Okay, in this case, we've selected ATA 31, our indicating and recording systems. When I select number ATA 31 as I've done here, then this will populate. I can now filter for system tests or LRU replacement tests. There are no operational tests for the ATA 31, okay? Excuse me. The AMM is going to tell you this, which one to select. So in this case, we've selected systems, and it shows me the components that I can do a system test on. The system test is a full test, okay, of the system. In this case, we've selected maintenance light. So I'm using my cursor, still using the cursor selector, stepping it down, pressing the select button. Once I've highlighted the test I want to make, I'll use the cursor again. It'll drop down to continue. I select continue, and this page now changes to this one. It now tells me I'm at the preconditions page. So these are things that you're going to have to do before you start the test, or the test is going to fail or not even start at all. So on here, it's going to give you a description. This test is going to illuminate the maintenance light. If you know that it's got the test that you're going to do is going to interfere with something else that somebody else is doing, then there's no point in starting it. Okay, so have a read of what it says. Don't just glance over these pages. On here, it's telling you how long it's going to take to do the test. Some tests may take half an hour or so. There's no point in starting it if you can't finish it. On here, it's going to tell you the effect it's going to have on the aircraft. The maintenance light will illuminate. Okay, it's just testing it. And then any limitations or requirements, it's always going to reference the AMM, okay, because we don't want you doing anything without referencing an approved document, the AMM in this case. And then to operate the test, it's going to tell you what to do. So we're going to refer to the AMM, the applicable task, the test itself. We're going to set the applicable task conditions, set the engine start lever or switch, whatever you want to call it, to cut off, and then select continue. So once everything's done, I move the cursor to continue. If I select go back, it goes to this page. But in this case, we've gone to continue. Now we continue at the test page. It tells me the chapter I'm going to do, what's going to happen. Okay, it's being done by DPC number 1, and it's telling me here that the test is ready. It's ready to go. Okay. There are many options that you could see here where it says ready. Yeah, inhibited. For some reason, the test is inhibited. You've not got something set up correctly. Operating. When I start the test, it will say operating. When I select start, that switch there will change to stop, so I can stop it if I want to. But it'll tell me it's operating here, and then it will either tell me that the system's passed or failed. Okay. If I select stop, it will just say stop in there, or stopped, and then I can start the test again. This will change to, this here then will change to operate test again. So in this case, it's all passed. We've started it, it's gone through it, and it's passed. I can, if I want to, operate the test again. If it fails, it'll give me a reason why it's failed. Okay, or it could give me a reason why it's failed. Okay, I can go back here to do a new test. That takes me right back to this menu. Okay. Go back, takes me back to this page, the previous page. Post conditions, again, what I need to do now to put the aircraft back to its normal configuration if I've made any changes to any switches and such like. Or I can, if I need to prove that the system has passed, I can generate a report, okay, to send off with my documents, okay, my file. System config. So we looked at the MAX display system configuration earlier on, okay, when we looked at the maintenance control pages. That gave me all the software part numbers and such like for the DPCs, okay. On this one here, we're now looking at our configuration for all of these ATA chapters, okay. So a lot of LRUs that are fitted to aircraft these days have what they call CMOS chips inside them, where they store inside their non-volatile memory things like serial numbers, part numbers. So when you plug these components in, they automatically report that information, or you can get that information. You can interrogate these units and get that information from them. So this is quite handy if you've got a lot of software in a component and you want to check what's in it, or you've got, in this case, let's say we're looking at the indication and recording systems, you can see the actual part numbers of the displays themselves without having to take the displays out. So all you do is select it, okay? When you've selected the system you want, you can select continue, and then from there it will list everything. So in this case you can see here DPC number 1, there's the part number of the DPC, the serial number of the DPC, okay? Saves you having to go down there to check, and then all the software that's within it. And again, the part numbers and serial numbers of those LSAPs. As I said to you earlier, it might be software, but it's classed as a physical part. Okay. Down here, you can see the displays, outboard displays, okay, for captains and first officers. And again, hardware part numbers. Okay. So again, you don't have to go and take the displays out to see what part numbers are fitted. It's all there for you. Go back to this menu, report, generates a report. So you can either print it off on the flight deck printer, you can save it to your portable maintenance device, or you can transmit it if you have that capability. Okay? So again, it's all there. You may not need it, but it's always there for you if you do. Okay? As like I said before, it's always better to have something and not need it rather than need it and not have it. The other thing we have is what we call fault guidance. So the fault guidance, you may or may not need this. It really does depend on the person themselves, how much experience they've got on the 737 as a whole, and how much experience they've got on the MAX. There's a whole bunch of places that you can do ground tests on this aircraft. It's not like the 787 where pretty much all ground tests are done through the central maintenance computing function. We can do some tests through our maintenance pages like we've just seen, but not everything. Okay, there's numerous places where we can do those tests, some of which are from the onboard maintenance function, like I've just said, some of which are from front panel bite checks, tests on the boxes themselves, on the LRUs, and for some systems, the CDU for the flight management computer, okay, things like FQuIS and the head-up guidance system. Those tests are done through this, the CDU for the flight management computer. What this is doing really, if you don't have much experience on the aircraft and you're not too sure where these tests can be done from, then this is showing you where those tests can be done from. Okay, if we look at the top one for the digital cabin pressure controller, it's a byte procedure. It's telling me where to go to do that. Okay, the E1 and the E22 rack. We've got two of those cabin computer pressure controllers. So on the front of those boxes, you're going to have the test on the front of there, the front panel push test. Okay, so it's telling me there where to go. Let's have a look for another one. Portable maintenance device. Here we go. Integrated air systems controller. Access location, flight deck, forward display, or the portable maintenance device. So you're going to use the ground test here for that. Okay, that's where you're going to have to do the test for those. CDU one, there we go. Mode control panel for the auto flight function, the autopilot or the flight director, the MCP on the glare shield. You're going to use the CDU for that, for the flight management computer to do the test. I got asked a question yesterday. Great. In my book, there's two types of questions. There's a great question, and then there's a good question. Great questions are the ones that I can answer. A good question is the one I have to go and get an answer to. Okay. So on here, did somebody want something? Sorry. Nope. Okay. So on here, you see FIM reference. Okay. FIM reference is not used on the MAX. Okay, this software is very similar. It's the same sort of software that's used on the 777X and the 787. The FIM reference here, even though it's shown, it is not used on the MAX aircraft. On other aircraft that have electronic AMMs and such like FIMs that are actually part of the onboard maintenance function, it will give you a FIM reference there that you can select to take to the fault isolation procedure. Okay, but not on the MAX. Is that okay? So just in case you're wondering what the FIM reference was. I got asked that yesterday, and I'll be honest, I didn't know myself. So I asked Seattle, and they got back to me with an answer. Okay. So just in case you were wondering what that was. Okay. Right. And this next slide. So this is to do with the crew wireless access code. So as I said to you before, when it comes to the crew wireless system, it is an option. So if you don't have the crew wireless system, then you don't get this selection. Okay. But we're going to show it you just in case you do come across it. When it comes to connection of the portable maintenance device, you've got the hardwired, where you plug straight in using a hardwire cable, Ethernet cable, or if you have this option, crew wireless, the wireless technology. Doesn't matter which connection you use, you've got to have certificates on your computer, on your portable maintenance device. So I can't come along with my little Acer and connect to your aircraft. Okay, I might be able to plug in, but I'm not going to access anything. Okay. When it comes to the wireless side of the house, then we're going to give more protection. The reason for that, quite simply, is if somebody is sat in the flight deck of your aircraft or in the E&E bay, hardwired, then we expect you to know that they're in there. Okay, but we also have the option with this crew wireless where you don't have to be on the aircraft. The wireless technology doesn't give you, miles and miles of coverage by any means. It pretty much is the footprint of the aircraft, but there is a risk factor with that. Okay, so we have to minimize those risks. So we give you a code that you have to put in. And basically when you connect wirelessly, and I don't know if anybody's done this with the aircraft, whether it be the MAX or the 87, the wireless connections are shown just as you would see a normal wireless connection in an office environment or even at home. The way I've seen them configured when I go to the airport in Manchester here, I'm quite fortunate where I live, is that we've got airlines that operate out of Manchester that have got 87, and this is a similar principle. So I can get access to the 87s quite easily, get an airside pass. And when I've looked at the crew wireless and looked for the wireless connections, they use tail numbers. Okay, you can maybe see 3 or 4 depending on how many aircraft are parked out there or in the hangar. You run a risk when you are wirelessly connected that you connect to the wrong aircraft. Okay, we're only human, we make mistakes. So if we're going to start transferring files, changing software, updating software for new versions, then I want to make sure that I'm on the aircraft that I need to be on, not inadvertently connected to the one next to it, okay? So when I select a tail number of an aircraft wirelessly, I'm going to get a pop-up box, okay, on my portable maintenance device, on my laptop. I'm going to have to go to the flight deck now of the aircraft I've connected to get that ID code, okay, this access code. And I believe it's 10 minutes, although I do believe it's going to be changed to 15 minutes, but I'll leave it at the moment, it's 10 minutes that code is active. It's a random generated code, it's all randomly done by the network file server. So I've connected to the aircraft. I now need this code to allow me to get right in what we call a wireless full connection. I go onto the flight deck, I look at the maintenance panels here, and I see that access code, and I type it in to my portable maintenance device. That allows me through the firewall, and in I go. Okay, and now I can do pretty much everything that I can do in the flight deck, but I don't have to be in the flight deck. I'd be sat in a nice comfy chair in the cabin, or sat on the tires or something of that nature. Okay, that code is active for 10 minutes. So my colleague could come along with their laptop and they could use the same code to get access. After that 10 minutes is expired, it doesn't kick me out. I still stay connected. Okay, anybody else now who comes along will have to generate a new code. So again, they go on the aircraft, and now they would select new access code. It would generate a new random access code that they would use. I still stay connected, no problem. But we've got multiple connections now using different codes. The only time I would have to now go and put the code back in, the same code or a new code, is if I moved outside of that wireless area, that wireless zone, and I lost my connection. When I walk back into the zone, not like your iPhones and stuff like that, when you're at home, it automatically connects to your Wi-Fi. It doesn't do that. You have to put the code back in, okay? If the code's expired, you're going to have to generate a new code and put that one in, okay? So the code's good for while you're connected. It's good for 10 minutes. You can stay connected for hours and hours and hours if you wanted to, using the same code. But as soon as you come out of that zone and go back in, if it's over 10 minutes, you're going to have to get a new code. Okay. 5 wireless connections it will provide. Okay. If you have 2 hardwired connections, then you'll only get 3 wireless connections. There's no priority. So if I've connected with 5 wireless connections and the president of the airline turns up and plugs their computer in, it's not going to kick me out. Okay. There'll be no connections available. Okay, on the laptop will show until somebody drops out. Okay, so there's no preference on that. Okay. Extended maintenance. So this is the next option along. Extended maintenance is there if you've got additional time. So Boeing have sorted these and filtered these for jobs and maintenance that you'll do on a turnaround at the gate, let's say, and then maintenance that you will have when you've got additional time, if it's on an overnight or it's in for base maintenance or something of that nature. But we've got a similar sort of drop-down menu: present leg faults, existing faults, fault history, data load, maintenance enable, disable, and backup and recovery. Okay, so I'll have a quick mosey on through those. So present leg faults, okay. Very similar to the inbound flight deck effects that we looked at on line maintenance, but it's showing both correlated and non-correlated maintenance messages for the present leg, okay, so flight leg 0. It's listed by fault, so the most recent fault is listed at the top, and then later faults are going down towards the bottom. As you can see here, there are many faults on this aircraft. You've got 10 selectors at the side. That's 10 pages. I apologise that this is just to give you an idea of what you could potentially see. It doesn't mean it's a real life scenario, real case scenario. Number of items, it says 8. Well, if you've got 10 pages, you're going to have more than 8 faults. I can guarantee that. Okay, but it just shows you where the faults, tells you how many faults you've got. But again, it's very similar to what you've already seen. The layout is very similar. you've got your status messages, so these are correlated maintenance messages. Fault codes, maintenance messages, they are a status message, whether it's active or inactive or latched, the time and date, okay. Again, you can go through the page and you can look at more information. You can sort it by ATA chapter rather than the occurrence when it happened time-wise. In here you can see sort by ATA. It lists all the ATAs that have got faults recorded. Okay, if your ATA chapter doesn't have a fault, then it won't be shown. All you would then do is sort by ATA as is shown here. You would then use your cursor again and select the ATA chapter that you want, okay, and hit continue. Once you've made a selection here, this will illuminate, allowing you to select it. It goes grey like this, okay. Sort by FDE, again, will take you back to that sort of view. Report, as I mentioned before, allows you to generate a report, to print it, send it, or save it to your portable maintenance device. In this case, we've selected air conditioning, and then here it lists all the current faults for the air conditioning system. Some of them are active, some of them are inactive, but they're all stored, okay? These are probably deferred faults that you've got time to do it later on in the day or in the week. And again, it's showing you here the maintenance message itself, what's detected it, the time and the date, okay? Again, these are flight deck effects, maintenance messages, all listed, okay? Select new ATA takes you back to this page, so you can select another chapter, or you can select sort by FDE, which takes you back to that page again, okay? And the report, well, again, prints and saves and sends if you've got those options. So quite a lot of information there. Existing faults. Oh, again, existing faults. Very similar to the inbound flight defects, but again, it's showing maintenance messages that are not only status messages, but maintenance messages that are correlated to things like maintenance memos. Okay, scheduled maintenance tasks. Scheduled maintenance tasks won't bring on the fault light, the maintenance light, but they could be tied to a maintenance message or maintenance memo. Maintenance memos are there again as a bit of a heads up. You may have a fault tolerance system, had a single failure, nothing's, it's not brought up a status message, so the aircraft isn't on the ground, you don't have to fix it, but a maintenance memo could pop up to tell you that if you lost this next channel or this next component, another LRU, then you're looking at a status message. So it's giving you a little bit of a heads up, these maintenance memos. Scheduled maintenance tasks, we've already mentioned those. Okay. Again, can be shown as active, non-active or latched. But again, here it shows the ATA chapters that has existing faults. So these are faults, again, that are from previous legs, current leg and previous legs. Okay. The onboard maintenance function has flight leg 0 as your current, and then 1 through 99 are your previous flight legs. Flight leg 0 is always the current flight leg. In this case, we selected 34, and there are faults, okay, maintenance messages. So these aren't correlated. There's no flight deck effect with these. These are just maintenance messages, okay, but they are still active. So they've probably been deferred. Or these could be maintenance messages that are showing because you've got a fault tolerance system, something of that nature. You could see a flight deck effect in here. So you would see the fault code for the pressure light for the hydraulics or fuel if the switch is off. But as soon as you turn the switch on and you generate pressure, that fault code is removed. So you can see what's reporting to the onboard maintenance function. Fault history. So all the fault history of the aircraft is stored in the network file server, okay, which is why, I would have thought it would be wise to have an SD card in there. If you lose your network file server for whatever reason, then you've lost all the fault history for that aircraft, unless you've backed it up elsewhere. But this is allowing me to look back at all previous flights, okay, including the current leg, but all previous legs, for history of faults. So faults that have happened, have occurred, but been fixed, okay. even though we don't show them on inbound flight deck FX or existing flight deck FX, it's not deleted completely, okay? We just don't see it. It is stored, so we can go back and look for these faults, okay? If you do change the network file server for a new one, or you change it from another aircraft, then make sure you back up the network file server, okay? The reason I say that is that if you plug a network file server in, let's say you're swapping a network file server from another aircraft because you're just robbing it to get the aircraft out, then when you plug that network file server in from another aircraft, you're going to have to change the tail number of the aircraft that the network file server is now being fitted to. When you change the tail number of the aircraft, it automatically deletes the fault history, okay? Because we don't want the wrong fault history on the wrong aircraft. So it will automatically delete that. So make sure you back that network file server up from that other aircraft. So when you get the new network file server for the aircraft you just robbed this one from, you can put the fault history back into it, okay? Be careful when you do it, because it will overwrite the fault history. But on here again, we can look at the fault history for the various ATAs. We can filter it by ATA, by leg, so from leg 0 all the way through to 99. We can export it. Again, export it is like transmitting it, sending it to the, creating a file in the network file server, allowing me to then move that to the portable maintenance device. Allows me to print it if you've got the printer. You can delete all the fault history using this icon. If you do select delete all, it doesn't instantly delete it. It asks you if you're sure. Okay, a bit of a, are you really sure you want to do this? It's not always a good idea to delete the fault history. And again, you've got the report there, as I say, to generate reports, send reports wirelessly, data link. Okay, this one is just showing you by flight leg. So flight leg 0, current, we've only done one previous flight leg, it's quite new. And then again, all these will go back all the way. Complete flight fault history there. The next picture we'll look at, I know there's quite a lot here, but really, it really is just this, for a lot of it is similar information, just shown in a different way. The data load. So data load function, you may have heard this referred to on 87 as onboard data load function. This is all to do with LSAPs, okay, loadable software airplane parts. So initially when you select data load, you won't have anything down here in this window. This will be blank. You've now got to make a selection here, okay, and again, someone selected ATA31, somebody obviously likes indicating the recording systems. We've selected it. It now shows you all the LRUs that can have LSAPs in them that you can now update. So these are the LRUs that have software in them, okay? Aircraft Conditioning Monitoring Unit, DFAU, DPC1 and DPC2, okay? In this case, we've selected DPC number 1. Once I select DPC, once I've made a selection here, this continue, okay, is selectable. So I've selected DPC number 1. I've now selected continue. This page changes to this page. And on here, this LSP, loadable software parts, okay, LSAPs. Excuse me. This is showing me all the software that I can put into that display processing computer. This software is stored in the network file server, the electronic filing cabinet, okay? So on here, they're going to have versions 1, version 2 possibly, the latest version and the previous version. And this allows me to select either one or multiple software loads, okay? Tells me the part number, as you can see here, and what the part is, operational software, things of that nature, okay? So I've selected what I want. In this case, I only just selected this one piece of software. The engineer, the maintenance guys are going to have a job card. They're going to be told what they're going to have to do, what software they're going to update. This is where they go to get that software. So the software's got to be on the network file server to begin with, okay? We've gone to the network file server, we've selected it using this interface. And then I select continue. Up here, it now shows me a summary. This is the next window that will come up. It's telling me what I'm going to do. It's summarizing what I've been asked to do. Indicating a recording system 31, DPC number 1, and in this case, just one piece of software. You could have a whole bunch of software listed down here. Okay. Unfortunately, hidden behind this picture, we have a continue button. You can't see it. If I select continue, it's now going to come up with preconditions. It's going to tell me what I got to do before I do that update. So you can just about read it, especially with my eyesight these days. Set the engine start lever to cut off. Make sure the data load selector switch is set to left, captain, upper, and the system select switch is set to DPC. Okay, so captain for the left, FO for the right, or you can put it in upper to bang it into both of them. Okay, so you've got to do all that first. Once you've done all that, and again you're going to be following the job card, the AMM and such like for software loading, you're going to hit start load. Once you hit start load, then this is going to start to change this status here. Okay, it's telling me it's ready. Hit start load, and now this is going to start to count up. It depends how big the software is or how much software you've got, but it'll do them individually. It'll do one, then it'll do the next, then it'll do the next, then it'll do the next. So again, it depends on how big that piece of software is. You may see it go from 0 to 50 to 100%, just like that. Or it may go up slower, 2%, 5%, 8%, 10%, that type of thing. But you'll see it counting up, okay? And it's purely automatic. In this case, with it being the DPCs, what's happening here is as I load new software to that DPC, it will overwrite the old version. So on the component itself, in the DPC's case here, we'll only have the latest piece of software now loaded to the DPC. The old software, the old version, has been overwritten. So you don't have to delete the old one to put a new one in, okay? It just overwrites it. In the network file server, you will also have the latest version of software because you've just copied it. You may have a previous version, okay? Certainly for things like the flight management computer, you may have 1 or 2 versions in there, the current and the previous. If people have been untidy and they've not managed it well for the FMC in 12 months, you may have 12 versions of that same software part number on the network file server. So at some point you're going to have to go in there and start to delete them. Okay, so when you do a data load, regardless of what system you're data loading, it takes a copy of the software from the network file server and it pastes it. Okay, so you always have the latest version of software in that NFS. So if you're at a remote station, you change your component out, you've already got the software for it with the aircraft. Okay. Maintenance enable and disable. Well, that sounds a bit strange. Why would you want to start disabling the onboard maintenance function? So this first one we're looking at here is the flight leg transition. So obviously the aircraft will change flight legs. Okay, it does it with engine start, or if engines are running the last door that closes, depending on the sequence, but it will change flight legs. If you're going to do an engine run, you may not want the onboard maintenance function to change flight legs because you're going to start an engine. It will change a flight leg. You may not want it to do that. So you can go in to the maintenance enable disable page here and disable that flight leg transition. So when you start the engines, start, stop, that type of thing, it's not going to change flight leg. Okay, it's going to continue. You can also, if you wanted to, disable the onboard maintenance function. Why would you want to do that? Well, there are tests on the aircraft, ground tests, that may generate faults. Just because you're doing a test, it may have an effect on a system and it will give you a status message, maintenance messages. All those messages, status messages, correlated messages are going to be held in the onboard maintenance function. At some point, you're going to have to go back and clear those faults. So all you're doing is generating work for yourself. So the best thing to do is to turn the system off. You know you're going to generate faults, turn the system off so it doesn't record them. It's software based. So if you're sat at home after your shift and you're having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or even better, a pint, and you're sat there thinking, oh, hang on a minute, did I switch that onboard maintenance function back on again? And you can't remember, it doesn't really matter because once the aircraft goes airborne, it automatically switches it back on. Okay, It's just a soft switch. That's all it is. It's a software switch. So this allows you to go in there, disable or enable the flight leg transitions and the actual onboard maintenance function itself. Okay. No point in generating work for yourself. We don't like to do that. We also have a backup and recovery option. Okay. This is standard. This allows me to manually backup or restore the network file server. Okay. The SD cards themselves, they're pretty much a standard off-the-shelf SD card. Again, once you put an SD card into a network file server, it will check to see if it's compatible. If it isn't, it will automatically initialize it, format it to make it compatible. In this case, you can see here the SD card, it is initialized, so it's okay. The last restorable backup, so the last time it made a backup was on that date at that time. I've got some options down here: media card details, backup to media card, or restore to network file server. Okay. If I go to the next page and I select media card details here, it shows me the SD card itself, 29 gig, available active backup storage and available recoverable backup storage. Okay. So these again is showing you the capacity of the card and how much memory is available, okay, for backup. If I wanted to, I could format the card. If I hit initialize media card, it's going to tell me, are you sure? You're going to delete everything that's on this backup. If you confirm it, it will do just that. It will wipe the drive, okay? It doesn't wipe the hard drive of the network file server, it just wipes the SD card, okay? Backup to media card. Well, as I said to you before, when the aircraft touches down, it will automatically back up everything on the hard drives to the SD card. However, we may want to do that manually. Okay, you may want to back it up straight away once you've updated software and such like. You may want to back it up straight away. So in that case, we allow you to do that. On here, we select backup to media card. Again, it's going to ask you, "What are you sure?" You click OK. Once you click OK, it will then start. It will slowly progress that backup to the SD card. It's not instant. It does take time, depending on how many files it's got to copy across. Once it's copied across, it will say, you know, it'll tell you it's completed successfully, and then you click OK. Okay, and then this here would change the status. Last restorable backup would be the time that you've just backed it up. Okay. We also have a restore to the network file server. So if I've changed my network file server for whatever reason, you need to make sure that you've taken the SD card out of the old one. Okay. Put the new network file server in, put the operational software on there, and then you can now start to copy across, restore the software from the SD card to your new network file server. And again, it's not instant, it does take time. It's a little bit like copying files from a hard drive to a USB stick. It does take a little bit of time. Depending on how much data is on that SD card will determine how long it takes. Okay, but you get the little like timer countdown window. It twirls to give you an indication that data's moving. It's not frozen or anything. Okay. And then we'll have a look at this, and then we'll have a coffee break because we've been going a little bit. Other functions. So on the inside, in the flight deck, there's only really one other function, and that is special functions. So if I select special functions, it gives me a list here of all the systems on the aircraft that I can do a special function on. What are those special functions? Well, primarily for maintenance. Going to put something into a non-normal condition for whatever reason. Okay, the one we use is for the proximity switch electronics units. So in this case, there's nothing visible down here until I make a selection there. Once I make that selection, HA32, it then gives me the available functions. Okay, so there's special functions that I can do. You've got air ground override, reset latches, and tail skid extend. You may not see that one, okay? We've got on the Dash 7, there's no tail skid. On the Dash 8, it's a fixed tail skid, unless you take the option to have a 2-position tail skid. On the Dash 9 and Dash 10, it's a standard 2-position tail skid. So if you've got the Dash 7 or the Dash 8 without the option, you won't see tail skid extend on there, okay? So we've made our selection, air ground override, and now I'm going to select continue. Again, it gives me some preconditions. It's seriously worth reading these preconditions. You're going to be following the AMM as well, but on here it's going to give you some the description of what you're going to do. It's going to say, in this case, when you continue with this function, it's going to do one thing or the other. It's going to put the aircraft in flight, or it's going to put it on the ground. That can have significant consequences to the aircraft when you're changing from ground to air or air to ground mode. How long is it going to take to actually switch it over? Well, it's just software, so it's not going to take long at all, okay? Less than a minute. Airplane effects, it's going to tell you here what effects it's going to have on the aircraft. You need to read these effects, and it's going to tell me here it may generate these maintenance messages. Okay, then I'll switch off the onboard maintenance function, okay, because I don't want to record any of this because I'm doing it deliberately. Down here, it gives me any special requirements and limitations, okay. Obey the instructions in the AMM. It's always going to tell you that. Put the airplane in air mode or put the airplane in ground mode before you operate the special function. If you do not obey the AMM instruction, injuries to persons and damage to the equipment may occur. So again, a get out of jail free card, okay? Follow the AMM. If you follow the AMM and something goes wrong, your back's protected. If you do it off your own back without following the AMM, then it's your head on the block. To run the function, refer to the AMM to do special function. Put the ground test switch into enable. So as soon as you put that ground test switch into enable, it puts the aircraft into what we call a maintenance mode. You're going to get the maintenance light up on the P5 panel and a status message, maintenance enable, okay? And then push continue. Once you do push continue, it's going to tell you what the function is going to be now. There it is here, proximity switch electronic unit, air ground override, the system's ready. So now I select start function. And on here now, it's going to ask me what I want to do. Okay, dual channel, A and a B channel. On here it's asking me, do I want to put both systems or just a single system into the air mode? Okay, up here it tells me what the aircraft is currently in. So it's on the ground. The air ground is not active. So now I'm going to select one of these or two of these depending on what I want to do. Okay, and then I'm going to hit continue. Oh, sorry, stop function, I think. Okay. But this at this point then is going to put the aircraft into flight, okay, into the air mode. So be very careful when you're using this. Gone are the days, I can remember years ago when you used to have to put little targets under the sensors to simulate the aircraft being on the ground or in the air, or even put it up on jacks. So it's all software driven. I think Brian will probably cover this a little bit more detail tomorrow as well. And sorry, Brian, did you want to say something?
That is correct, I will.
Okay. So Brian will cover that in a bit more detail tomorrow, and some of the precautions you're going to have to take with that. Okay. Shall we have a coffee break? No one ever says no. So have a coffee break. We'll take, so now it's 20 to the hour. Shall we say 15 minutes, come back at 5 to? Is that okay for everyone? Gives you enough time to get a coffee, cigarette, bit of a stretch your legs, take the dog for a walk. Okay, I'll see you in at 5 to. Cheers, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry.